Welcome to Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino, live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app. And if you're watching on YouTube, we hope you're subscribed to our channel. Coming up on the show, Nick Giffen stops by with NASCAR Picks, plus Billy Ward will break down UFC 300, but we start with the NBA playoff race. Tonight, the Magic visit the Sixers, who are favored by 7.5. 83% of bets and 93% of money are on the Sixers. They need to keep winning to avoid the play-in, currently in 7th, but only a game behind the 5th place Magic. Joel Embiid is questionable. The Pacers are clinging to the 6th seed, getting 2.5 on the road against the Cavaliers, who are in 4th place, but only a game ahead. 87% of bets are on the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell to go under 25.5 points is an Action Pro top prop with a grade of A+. And finally, the Warriors are laying 4 at home against the Pelicans. Both teams on the second night of a back-to-back. Pels are in 6th place, a game ahead of the Suns. Warriors have a play-in spot. Steph Curry to go under 26.5 points, also an Action Pro top prop with a grade of A+. Let's welcome in our NBA experts, Chris Raybon and Sean Little. There's a lot at stake this weekend in both conferences. Raybon, when you look at seeding storylines, what intrigues you the most?
Oof, I mean, there's a lot to choose from, but I got to go with this battle for the West number 8 seed because you have Sacramento, Golden State, and the Lakers all tied at 45 and 35. Now, Sacramento has a tiebreaker, right? But that means that the number 8 seed is going to have to play Phoenix or New Orleans. So that's already a really tough matchup. And then if Sacramento can get the A seed, that means LeBron or Steph is going home. But I think the Warriors are probably the best team out of those three. And so if they get the 8 seed, now they get 2 cracks. Now you're talking about maybe they can make a run. So I'm just really intrigued by this 8 seed because it's going to be a gauntlet, and you're going to have a couple of quality teams, I think, going home when it's all said and done.
I think gauntlet is the perfect word for this. And it's not just the West, Sean, the East too. There's a lot that can change in the next couple of days. What do you think is the most interesting?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the East that's just like there is in the West. And that's the reason the play-in is awesome, because it creates all these storylines and tiebreakers throughout the year that flat out didn't really happen when it was a 1 through 8 situation, automatic bid. So that's why the play-in is great. But I think the most important slot in the East is the 3, because it puts you on the opposite side of the Boston Celtics. It just gives you a cleaner run. And right now, the Knicks sit in that slot, and I like that matchup for them if the Pacers, stay in the 6. So that 3 slot in the East is very interesting. One note that isn't talked about enough is that the 3 knows who they're going to play in that 6 slot. The 1 and the 2 still have to wait, still have to split game time and prep time on who's going to come out of the play-in. And that's essentially can be a waste of time if you don't know who you're going to play and you bury time trying to figure out a matchup that you're not even going to end up having in the playoffs. Couple more things on the East. 1 versus 8 could be Boston versus Miami. Hello. That's a rematch that we would like to see. That would be a lot of fun. And then if you look at the 2 and the 7, we're talking about the Bucks, and then potentially maybe against the Sixers and the big fellow Joel Embiid without Giannis. Who knows how healthy he's going to be once playoffs start. That's an awesome matchup. That's also why the 3 in the East is so important. You get to avoid those 2 scenarios.
And what's interesting, Sean, too, is the Bucks still have a chance to fall to 3. So if the Knicks overtake them, the Bucks could be dangerous if they get Giannis back and they can avoid the Celtics. That would be the Bucks would be like a sleeping giant in there. You have Dame time and Giannis comes back. The Celtics are not going to be comfortable with that if that's the Eastern Conference Finals. So I really loved this matchup at the top.
I think going into this season, we all expected that big 3 to be like Boston, Milwaukee, and Philly. Embiid's injury kind of threw everything off. And now Giannis being injured, I mean, those are 2 of the best players in the league that could swing the outcomes of a game or series. any which way. So I think that's a bit of drama that we maybe didn't expect to have at this point.
I mean, if we really quick, Maria, if we want to get really deep into it, it could swing the landscape of the league, right? Say Giannis gets hurt or he doesn't get all the way back and they end up getting bounced in the first round and he's not happy with his situation. I mean, it could get really crazy here depending on when some of these teams get bounced, just like if Phoenix doesn't make the playoffs. I mean, that's why this last couple days is interesting with the play-in and then, of course, the playoffs starting.
Giannis, Embiid, Jason Tatum, Jalen Brunson. Don't forget about him. That's
I would never.
That boy is playing on that same level right now. So don't forget about my guy.
No doubt. And speaking of, let's get into our picks here. We got a couple from you, Raybon. Where do you want to go first?
Let's stay with the Knicks. So I'm going Knicks Nets over to 11.5. I love targeting these really low totals with overs. That's really the only time I'm going to be playing overs. But you look at Jalen Brunson, he's averaging over 35 points per game over his last 15 games. And Knicks overs are 11-4 over that span, about 222 combined points per game over that span as well. And the Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart lineups without Julius Randle have been playing really well offensively. Their offensive rating, I think it's north of 125. And Brooklyn on the other side, they still, they've been a slower paced team since Kevin Ollie took over, but they're still getting to 213 or more 62% of the time. And when you look at this matchup, this is the spot, historically, if you look at our Action Labs data, when you have a total that's more than 16 points below the league average, which this one is, and the home team favored by more than a possession, you usually see these hit at a very high rate, 73% since 2016, 75, 28, and 3. So this is a rare spot where I'm on an over, but I just think the Knicks are playing really well offensively, and I think they could get it there. And, they got rest. Thibodeau usually plays these guys 40 plus minutes, but Brunson only played 30 minutes because it was a blowout after 3. And Josh Hart didn't play his usual allotment of minutes, and neither did OG. I think he played 26. So the Knicks are a little more rested than usual, even though they're on a back-to-back.
Right. And I think the Nets are going to try here too. I mean, they've won 3 of 4, and I think people downplay a little bit the Nets games. I mean, Mikal Bridges is going to want to go hard against his old teammates. I think they'd love to rain on the Knicks parade. I don't think it's going to happen, but I could definitely see it being competitive. All right, Sean, what do you got?
Yeah, I gave out on buckets last night, the Suns -4.5. I still like that spot as well, but I'm also going to stay on the same game, same side. I'm going to take the team total, though, over 114.5 for the Phoenix Suns. Kings, last 10 home games, 23rd in defensive rating, best in the NBA in points allowed, only giving up 38.3 in the paint. But guess what? The Suns could care less about that because they don't score buckets in the paint. They shoot a lot of mid-range jumpers and they spread the floor and shoot it from the perimeter. They're 26th in the NBA in points in the paint this year. Also, Kings are on the back-to-back, 5 and 9 ATS on back-to-backs. And then the Suns have that tiebreaker versus the Pelicans. The 6th seed is still in play. They're only 1 game back. You're going to get a very motivated Suns team here in this spot. And also, overall, I just believe the Kings are running out of gas here. No Malik Monk, no Kevin Huerter. They're really thin. Suns are coming off a full day rest, short travel from LA. They just got done with that duplex spot against the Clippers where they got blown out in that first matchup, and then the Clippers essentially took the night off in that second one. So it's almost like a little similarly to what Raybon just laid out for the Knicks. They didn't have a tough game in that second duplex spot against the Clippers. All the big guys rest. They ended up getting the Clippers big guys rest. They got a big W, and now they got a day off, and then they come in against a shorthanded Kings team that's been poor on back-to-backs. I like full game -4.5, and I like the team total over 114.5 for Phoenix.
I love a correlated play riding with the side of Phoenix. Suns are in 7th place right now. They have a 2-game lead on the other 3 Western Conference play-in teams. And Raybon, you have one more pick for us.
Yeah, I like Evan Mobley to go under his assist prop today. It's 3.5, and he is averaging a career high 3.2 assists per game. But remember, Mitchell and Garland have missed a combined 50 games, and Mobley's missed a bunch of time as well. Well, when Mobley plays alongside both Mitchell and Darius Garland, he's just going to get less touches, and that means less assists. He's averaging just 2.6 assists per game when both of those guys play, and this is an important game for them against the Pacers, so it looks like they'll be a go once again. 3.9 when at least one of those guys sits, so big difference in the splits. And then this Pacer team, we know what they do defensively. This is a team that's trying to limit 3-point opportunities, which that just ticks down assists for everybody that they face, because 3-pointers are the most commonly assisted baskets. But Indiana makes you get those point paints, as Sean likes to call them. So, Mobley, he's had 3 or fewer assists in 63% of his games overall. But in the games where Mitchell and Garland both play, he's had 3 or fewer assists in 20 of 26. That's 77%. So I actually like this to minus 230. I think this should be juiced up a lot more than it is at minus 130, minus 135 right now.
Man, this is going to be another good game. So many good things to watch. Sean Little, Chris Raybon, we'll be seeing more of you guys as the NBA playoffs get underway. Thank you for joining us. Out to Las Vegas, where we have what many are calling the best card in UFC history. That's right, UFC 300 has arrived, and it's absolutely stacked. 12 former champions, 20 fighters currently ranked inside the top 15 of their weight classes, and 3 titles are on the line Saturday night. Also, Dana White announced at yesterday's press conference that in honor of this card, performance of the night bonuses will be raised from the regular $50,000 to $300,000, so we can expect some big action. UFC expert Billy Ward is back on GDD. Good to see you. In your words, why is 300 so significant? Break it all down for us.
Yeah, it's interesting. The last Centennial events they did, 100 and 200, it was more about the star power at the top. They had Brock Lesnar for UFC 100. That was a big deal. This time they're going with a more, as you alluded to, every fight on this is somebody you've heard of, somebody you care about. So it's a little bit of a different vibe than the last big events they did. I kind of like this one better. We've got 3 5-round title fights, as you mentioned. Every fighter is someone that's interesting for the division. Every fighter could be in the title picture within a fight or two. So I really like the direction they went with it this time, just from a entertainment value of every fight on the card you're going to be interested in and wanted to watch. Not only do we have the light heavyweight title main event, we've got the women's 115. We also have the BMF belt, which is kind of a made-up belt, if we're being honest. They don't really defend it. It goes in various weight classes. Just because you win it now doesn't mean it's still your belt. But it's fun, and it's an excuse to have Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway go for 25 minutes, which no one's going to complain about if you follow either of those 2 fighters. So very excited for that fight. Don't really care that they're calling it this made-up belt that bounces weight classes, but I do enjoy that they're doing it, and not going to complain about 10 more minutes of that banger of a fight.
Hold on, remind me what the BMF belt stands for again.
That would be the bad motherfucker belt.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. Anyway, let's get into your picks. You have one for the main event. What is it?
Yeah, I'm going with Alex Pereira. You can still get him at minus 130. Lines moved around a little bit. Was hoping we'd see some more movement here, but he's fighting Jamahal Hill. Jamahal Hill is only 9 months removed from a full Achilles rupture that he suffered last July at International Fight Week. Kind of a unique situation. We don't see this injury in MMA a lot. It's usually a basketball and football injury. And Jamahal Hill was playing pickup basketball when it happened. He didn't hurt himself training. But I don't think he's full strength here. I don't think he wanted to come back. This was the last fight they announced on the card. He said in an interview he wasn't really expecting to fight. Even if the Achilles is 100% now, how long has that been the case? Was he able to get a full 6, 8, 10 weeks in of training before this? I don't think he is. And Pereira is the best leg kicker in MMA right now. So that's not the guy you want to fight if you're a little bit worried about, this structural integrity of your calf. The other thing here, Jamahal Hill is a really good style for being a taller, longer fighter. Former D2 basketball player, 6'4", likes to stay on the outside and touch people from range. Alex Pereira has a slightly longer reach. So stylistically, it's a tough matchup for him. Don't think either guy's going to try to wrestle here. And then when you factor in the injury, I just don't see Jamahal having the edge here. Were he full strength, this would be a pretty close fight where I'd make this line about right. Given the injury, I can't say the same.
Okay, picking the fighter looking to defend his title from November. And your next pick is also in the light heavyweight division, but a prelim fight.
Yeah, and this is probably, it's crazy that this is a prelim fight. That speaks to why this is such a good card, but the winner of this one is probably going to fight the winner of the main event. I think they put this on the card just in case something happened to Hill or he wasn't full strength. They could slot one of these guys up. But I am taking Yuri Prohaska, who lost the title fight against Alex Pereira last November for the vacant title. Little bit of early stoppage in that fight. Yuri was looking for a takedown, got hit a few times. I think at the time it looked like he got knocked out, but if you watch the tape back, might have just slipped. He's fighting Alexander Rakic, another fighter who's coming off almost a 2-year layoff from a torn ACL. I'm sure his knee is fine. You know, that's a pretty long time to recover, but that's a long time to be out of competition. I don't know what the ring rust is going to be like there. The real problem, though, is Prohaska has a super weird style. His hands are low. He has really good head movement, moving all around. The way you stop guys like that is by kicking them in the legs. But Alexander Rakic probably hasn't thrown a full force leg kick with no shin pads against another human being in 2 years when he had that injury. So that's the weapon he might need to rely on against Yuri. I don't think it's going to be there. Again, this is probably going to be almost exclusively a striking match. If they do grapple, I'd give Yuri a slight edge here. He submitted Glover Teixeira. Both guys will get a takedown here and there, but Yuri's a little bit more active with it. Should play well to the judges. This one's only 3 rounds, so slightly higher chance we get the judges involved. Although with those $300,000 bonuses, I don't think anyone's going to be waiting too long to see what the judges think.
Fighters coming off a long-term injury seems to be a theme here at UFC 300. But Billy Ward, it was so good to see you. Thank you. And for more from him, make sure you go to actionnetwork.com because he's written a bunch of in-depth fight previews. Billy, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's NASCAR season, so make sure you check out the podcast Running Hot with new episodes out every Thursday. This week, Stephen Young joins Nick Giffen to preview the weekend. Listen now wherever you get your pods or on our YouTube. As we say hello to our predictive analyst, Nick Giffen, who has picks for the Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 400.
Yeah, a mouthful there.
Yes.
Not quite as simple as like, Purdue versus Connecticut. But it is what it is. We get these sponsor names in NASCAR and they're pretty long, but this race is at Texas Motor Speedway. Texas is a 1.5 mile track. That's kind of like the bread and butter. We call them the cookie cutter tracks. This is like what NASCAR had been known for, especially in its big growth period in the late 90s, early 2000s. Now we only get around 6 of these races a year. But that's what I'm going to be focusing on is these 1.5 mile tracks to kind of compare current driver performance to each other so we can find some good bets. So the first bet I have is William Byron over Martin Truex Jr. to finish ahead of him, -135. And if we look since the start of last season, William Byron has won this head-to-head matchup versus Martin Truex Jr. in 6 out of these 7 1.5 mile traditional oval races here. The only loss that he had was earlier this year at Las Vegas. I was at the race where the world's largest trash bag ended up on the front nose of William Byron's car. Yes, that can happen in NASCAR races. And because of that, he ingested a beer can into the car. So I guess the car was drinking and driving, but it ended up in the air filter of the car, thanks to the world's largest trash bag. And that set Byron down more than a lap. And he made his lap back, came all the way to finish in 10th place. But he had a top 3 car that day. He would have finished ahead of Martin Truex Jr. without, some shenanigans there. So in other words, this really should be like 7 for 7. Byron's also just had the better car than Truex in 6 out of these 7 races at 1.5 mile tracks. If we use my flags metric, which stands for field level adjusted green speed, at these 7 races, Byron's been better in 6 of them. And at the 3 most relevant races, so if we look at Texas last year, which is of course where we are this year, Vegas earlier this year, because we use the same tire code as we're using at Texas this weekend, And then the 2022 Texas race, Byron is also faster in Truex at all three of those. So William Byron should be pretty heavily favored here. I think you could play this down to like -150, maybe even a little bit longer. You know, we're getting pretty thin value if we get down to like -160, -165, but I definitely like this at -135.
Okay, so you've got a favorite. What about like a longer shot play for the weekend?
Yeah, so William Byron is in a Chevy, but I'm going to look towards another Chevy driver, and that's Ross Chastain to finish as the top Chevy at +750. Now, definitely Kyle Larson should be favored. William Byron should be the second favorite in terms of the Chevys, but I have Ross Chastain as third in my model, yet books are pricing him as the fourth best Chevy. Chastain is definitely the third best Chevy lately on traditional mile and a half ovals, behind Larson and Byron, as I mentioned. At Texas last year, he was the third best Chevy after Kyle Larson and Eric Jones, and he was actually better than William Byron. And then at Vegas earlier this year, he was the third best Chevy behind Kyle Larson and William Byron. And a little bit of Kyle Busch earlier in the race as well, but late in the race, Ross Chastain definitely had the third best Chevy, which of course, late in the race is what matters most because that's where you're finishing. So I definitely think he's just priced a little too long as the fourth best Chevy. In fact, if we look at the top of the odds board across pretty much any sports book, you see Kyle Larson 1, William Byron 2, and then we see Chase Elliott as number 3. But it really hasn't even been close between Chastain and Elliott over the last, let's say, half of 2023 and the start of 2024. Chastain has been better than Elliott at all of those mile and a half tracks to end 2023 and starting this year. Chastain has 3 straight top 5 finishes at mile and a half ovals, including a second place at Texas last year. So definitely, like I said, he should be the third favorited Chevy instead of fourth. So I think making him around +625 is fair. Like my model has him around 6-1, but I think a little wiggle room, model error, I think I could play this down around +625 or so.
Nick Giffen, always a pleasure when you stop by the show. Make sure you're following him in the Action app, by the way. Do yourself a favor. But Nick, thank you.
Yeah, anytime.
Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, like the ones you just heard from Nick, you can easily reference by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. That's all for Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks for watching. And the show will be back Monday at 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel. Enjoy the weekend.